Right, can everybody see the presentation just now? Yeah, that all
Yep.
clear?
Yep.
Give us a wee nod. Ryan, you're going to be my go-to guy if there's anything, if I've got any
All good.
doubts. I'll just need a big nod. One of those big wobbly head nods, that's the one.
Yeah, Stephen, all good.
Good, good, good. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to mute everybody else so that you can just hear me and then there's no background noise. But delighted you could all join us today. So we're going to take you through basically the 6 most common running injuries and also try and give you a little bit of advice as to how to manage those ones and how to prevent injuries going forward. Since lockdown began over 13 weeks ago, we've obviously been doing a lot of online consultations, and as the weeks have gone on, we've seen more and more running related injuries, and there's a lot of common patterns amongst them all. And as a result, we thought, do you know what, it might just be a really good event to run an educational wee workshop like this and try and help as many people as we possibly can to help them avoid injury, because we know how valuable running has been to people during this period, because it's been their escape. So it's not just been for their physical health, it's also been for their mental health and emotional health, and help them with their sleep, help them with stress management, and help them just coping a lot with a lot of different things that's going on at the moment. So we thought we'd see what we could do to try and help as many people as we possibly could, and that's why we've put this presentation together. So hopefully you'll all be able to take something out of it. But as I said, use the chat, fire in some questions. We'll monitor that as we go through, and then we'll try and answer them all, hopefully within the content of the presentation already. But we'll save them for the end, and we'll go through them one at a time and make sure that we answer all your questions so that you get plenty of value and plenty of information from this tonight as well, because we want you all to learn something. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Stephen McLean. I'm the head physio at Optimal Physio. I was a sports scientist first of all, and then went into physiotherapy and worked in the NHS for about 8 years as a senior physio across quite a few different hospitals and musculoskeletal clinics and practices in the East End of Glasgow. And then went into private practice in 2010. So this is our 10-year anniversary that we get to celebrate in lockdown. And I'll also be joined tonight with Ryan Wilkie, who Ryan joined us as a senior physio as well and came from St Mirren Football Club. So he was the head physio there and also in charge of the first team. And he also headed up their youth academy as well during his time there as well. So we've got plenty of experience to share with you that's related to running injuries at the top level. So we're going to take you through some facts about the situation first. 79% of runners will have an injury each year. So that's 8 out of 10. That's a lot of people. And that's why we thought we could help a lot of people. Of them, the most common ones, so the 6 that we're going to focus on tonight are the sort of runner's knee, patellofemoral pain syndrome, plantar fasciitis, i.e. heel foot pain, we'll call it plantar pain. But just to have a little bit of clarification, that's just heel pain. And shin splints, we'll talk about what shin splints actually is. That's really just an umbrella term for a number of different things, but obviously pain in the front of the shin. Iliotibial pain syndrome, ITB syndrome, as a lot of people know it, that tight structure on the outside of the leg, and we'll talk about a little bit about that. Achilles tendinopathy, the Achilles everybody's aware of, and we'll explain what tendinopathy means. They account for about 11% of all running injuries, so they're big on the list. And finally, the hamstring strain. But the hamstring strain is a muscle strain, so that can apply to calf strains as well, but they're just obviously a little bit less common than hamstring in terms of what we've been seeing. So we'll talk you through all these things very, very quickly. So what causes running injuries? Well, there's been loads and loads of different research on that, and they've looked at a huge variety of things. Historically, they've always focused on like intrinsic things, i.e. structural things, from leg length to foot position, foot arches, angle of the hip, angle of the pelvis, etc., etc. And then they've started looking at extrinsic factors such as different shoes, how they've controlled the motion of the foot, and the pronation is a normal motion of the foot, but it's just how your foot rolls as it's in contact with the ground. Then they've also looked at different things like warm-up, compression garments, different treatments, and all of them have a sort of very limited evidence in how they can sort of really reduce injuries. So we're going to talk to you about the things that actually work and the things that are going to give you the most sort of value in terms of improving your running. Now, let's first start with talking about training errors, because training errors are fundamentally where we start when we're doing any assessment. We analyse the training and we go into a great deal of depth to try and identify patterns and see if there's been any training errors. Now, 60 to 80% of running injuries are due to training errors. That's why we spend so much time and detail going into it in detail. And you've got to try and understand what the patterns are so that we can identify those training errors and put them right. And if we can avoid making those training errors, then you're going to avoid making 60 to 80% of running injuries. So that's really, really the most important thing. And we'll talk to you a wee bit more about that tonight as well. Runners typically then exceed their tissue's capacity to tolerate load. So if they can't tolerate load, the tissue breaks down and we have an injury. So a combination of overloading with inadequate recovery is usually the most common problem. Poorly perfused tissues such as ligaments, tendons, cartilage, everything that the body is sort of made up of are obviously at risk more because of the forces involved when we run and the mechanical loads that we expose ourselves to when we run and the repetitive nature of running. So there's sort of two key factors affecting training load. BMI is one, and having a BMI greater than 25. So I'm not a fan of BMI, I'll be honest. Don't like it. Don't like the terminology of it. Much more interested in what the actual body fat composition is. But research has got a fair amount of BMI relevancy, if you like, and certainly the more muscle mass you carry, the higher your BMI as well. So there's obviously a direct correlation between weight and injury, but it's all to do with capacity to load. And usually, if you're more muscular and your BMI is higher, you can expose yourself to more load. History of past injury is really important, particularly within the last 12 months. So if you've had an injury within the last 12 months, you're automatically at more risk of injury. And that's something really we want to identify, and that's something we try and educate our clients on quite a lot and make sure that everybody who leaves our service has their own personal injury prevention program to try and make sure we minimise that risk for the next 12 months. But strength and conditioning is likely to increase the body's tolerance to strain load, and we'll spend a lot more time talking about that because that's where all the evidence is at the moment. So why do injuries happen? Obviously, tissues are continuously stressed and then they repair. And as a result of that, there's lots of different activities in sport, but overuse injuries specifically, and those little micro tears that occur as a result of exercise, they can sometimes develop over time if not treated properly or not listened to properly into more significant injuries. So what are the 6 most common injuries? We're first going to start with runner's knee. So patellofemoral pain syndrome is pain at the front of the knee. That affects the cartilage just underneath your patella. Now your patellas can be a sort of triangular shape almost at the bottom, and the best way to think of it is almost like a track and a train, and it glides through that nice little curved zone. And different people have different depths, it can be different shapes, so there can be a sort of structural issue behind that. But this type of injury can affect the top runners and amateurs alike, and it accounts for nearly 50% of all running injuries. It really is one of the most common ones that we see. And that really gives you a lot of tenderness around or behind your kneecap, pain that's really aggravated by downhill running, and a dull pain, particularly when you're running on uneven terrain, because that's when we tend to load this area the most. And you usually get a little bit of pain when we compress the patella. Sometimes people use the terminology maltracking. It's not really a great analogy to use, but there can be sort of alignment issues, but usually it's down to poor strength and flexibility and some sort of muscle imbalance somewhere in the chain. whether that's below or above the chain wheel. That's where we typically try to look. But that only gets magnified by their training errors. And we then try to look at how can we fix our training errors, and how can we put these structural and mechanical factors into a more efficient way, and then that reduces the pain and inflammation and allows the joint to be exposed to more load again, and then we just phase load it and return it back to full running. So in the early stages, it's about, can we minimize the inflammatory process, and that's with ice. Because it's a joint, it will respond well to anti-inflammatories. Sometimes a little bit of taping can work. Strengthening the hip and the glute muscles becomes usually quite a sort of big part of this, and particularly in people who don't have that control round about their hip. But improving the flexibility and mobility, more so than flexibility, and mobility is really, really important, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But that's really, really important. And then obviously there can be some sort of manual therapy to try and help that process along. But the real value comes from improving the mobility of the hip flexors and the strength around that, around about the hip, and the things that control the rotation of the hip and the strength of the quads. We can adapt your training volume and intervals to try and avoid the downhills, to try and avoid the load, and then progress hill training in a less painful way, because it's not as painful going uphill. So we can do more training on hill reps, because then it's obviously going to work the glutes more, work the upper hamstrings, work the quads, but not aggravate the joint as much, and allow things to settle down a little bit and still maintain your activity. Cross training obviously works quite well as well, to try and maintain a baseline level of fitness, which is good. So to prevent runner's knee, we want to be proactive, and we want to do lots of strengthening. We want to listen to your body and respond at the first sign of discomfort. We want to build the mileage quite gradually, and we don't really want to increase more than sort of 5 to 10% from one week to the next for the total week's volume. That's really quite important, not just one session to each, it's the week's load if we're looking at it from that perspective, and really avoid sort of downhill running. Injury number 2 is going to be plantar fasciitis, and Ryan's going to talk us through this section quite quickly. And
yeah, okay, so guys, so plantar fasciitis is a foot injury, so kind of incorporates probably 15% of all running injuries in the foot. It's estimated that probably 1 in 10 people will experience foot pain or plantar fasciitis in their lifetime. So the foot absorbs forces of 3 times the body weight throughout your when you're running. So the plantar fascia, so the plantar just simply means the kind of the sole, the bottom of your foot. So it's a thick elastic tissue that stretches from your heel all the way to the base of your foot. So it stabilizes the inner forces and allows peak during push off. So it's 7 times your body weight. So it takes a lot of load during running or walking. So plantar fasciitis, it's a self kind of limiting condition. So it does get better over time. Okay, but if you just leave it kind of on its own, it takes probably up to kind of a year to kind of get better, without doing any rehab to it. Some of the symptoms of plantar fasciitis are sharp stabbing pain or deep ache in the arch of the foot or bottom of your heel. Some people kind of describe it as like walking on glass when they first wake up in the morning, which is I've had it myself. It's really, really sore. You get stiffness and pain first thing in the morning, so a lot of people have to wear, as soon as they get out of bed, they have to put their shoes on because it's really, really sore. Worsens throughout the day as the body fatigues, and pain worsens when they climb stairs. It's a nagging injury, so it running through, it can delay healing. So if you kind of don't kind of address it straight away, it can become chronic and it can niggle away and last a long time. And it's one of these annoying injuries that kind of just think, okay, it's going to go away, and it doesn't. And also, so some of the causes of plantar fasciitis is overtraining. So where you think, okay, you do too much too soon. Vigorous hill runs or speed work can kind of cause it. Neglecting stretching tight calves. Tight calves can be one of the kind of main risk factors for it, because your calf muscles, if they tighten up, it attaches onto obviously your Achilles tendon, which then runs into your plantar fascia. So then that increases the load onto that. So that can cause a problem. Wearing unsupportive shoes. So whether sometimes you go on holiday and you think, okay, I'm going to wear my flip flops for a week or so, and then you've not got that support in your arch, and then after a couple of days on holiday, you're thinking, oh, my heel's really sore, and that's because you've not got that support, and that tends to be an issue. Starting a running program too aggressively, or lack of foot strength. So again, too much too soon. You think, okay, I want to push myself. And I do too much too soon, and you start to get a little bit of pain, and a lot of people think, right, okay, it's a little bit of pain, I'll push through, and then it gets to a point when they can't run anymore. Okay, and then you think, oh, I'll keep going, but in actual fact, the more you kind of keep going, it becomes a chronic issue, and it's more difficult for it to go away, and also down to biomechanical issues. So if you've got a high arch, if you've got a low arch, things like that. But again, things that can be assessed. So the main quick fix, or not quick fix, but the fix is mobilising tight structures and fascia and strengthening your foot muscles. So there's new research out saying, so if you do, there's a protocol, if you roll a towel up and you do some strengthening work with your calf raises on top of the towel, which is really good. That's probably the most effective treatment at the moment for the rehab for plantar fasciitis. Is looking at that. Manual stretching your foot by pulling your toe back. So again, lengthening that plantar fascia, pulling your toe back, stretching the plantar fascia, make sure it's got good mobility. Wearing supportive footwear and avoiding prolonged standing. So again, it goes back to making sure you've got good footwear. So again, if you go back to the flip-flops, it doesn't have that arch support. Okay, so as soon as you guys are people who tend to have plantar fasciitis to get out of bed in the morning, really sore, they walk to the bathroom in the morning and they're sore, it might be a case that they might need to put their shoes on to give them a little bit of support, or as soon as they get up in the morning, they're not walking on the bare foot because they haven't got that flat arch, or avoiding to say on holiday, they might have their flip-flops on and avoiding those. So physiotherapy to avoid, to mobilise and release tight fascia in the foot. So there's techniques you can use, soft tissue techniques, massage, different active release techniques that can definitely be beneficial for releasing the bottom of the foot. And strengthening, so it's not just looking at the foot itself, although the pain is localised to the foot, there might be the calf, there might be the hamstring, there might be the glute that's maybe not firing or strengthening just as much as what it should be, and that can be having an effect, as Stephen said, that may be somewhere up the chain that's causing the issue. So looking at strengthening those components. And then cross training with water, running, swimming, elliptical, and cycling. So if you're running and it's really sore, there might be a case that we can still do some training, but it might be that we need to alter your training method. So it might be, so we're not loading the foot just as much. It might be running in the water, so your load through the foot is not as high. We might be cycling, so we maybe run one day, the next day we change. So it's a different method of keeping fit, but also not loading the foot. And gait analysis, which we do also in the clinic, so looking to see where, if you do have a high arch, if you have a low arch, how can we alter that, and then see if that can benefit us, and try and reduce our pain levels. So prevention, so running, the main kind of things we look at is running on a variety of surfaces. So if you're constantly running on a hard surface and it's causing you pain, then we need to look at changing surface. So maybe softer surfaces, dirt paths, grass or trails, rather than the concrete, and then just changing so it's not always on the same surface. So running shoes, also make sure that the fit properly and they're not worn. If you've had them for years and they've worn, then you maybe not have the proper support. But again, that's something we can look at. The training program, so is it right for your ability? So again, you need to make sure that you're not doing too much too soon. So we look at your kind of previous exercise levels. If you've not really been that active before, if you're doing really high levels, then you're at high risk of getting injury. So you need to make sure that it's structured to your exercise levels. Foot strengthening exercises, again, something we can definitely look at. And then looking at the different parts of the chain, so stretching your tight hip flexors, your core. Things that, again, that you maybe don't think because it's pain in the foot, you think, okay, I need to work on just the foot, but actually you need to work up the chain. Things that can be contributing to why you're getting the pain in the first place. And also your lower back, if there's any history of injury in your lower back, has correlation to plantar fasciitis. So again, diving in to see what kind of injuries you've had in the past definitely help. So Achilles tendinopathy. So again, the Achilles. So it's the Achilles tendon is an energy absorbing and energy releasing structure. Okay, so the Achilles, if you don't know, so it runs down the back of the leg. Okay, attached from the calf muscles, so the gastroc and the soleus run down the back of the leg and then attach into the Achilles. Okay, so Achilles tendon and calf muscles, so they are really important for when you're running. Okay, so that you need to make sure they're effective and efficient and when you're running in your running technique. So that they're really prone to overuse purely because of its function. All right, so because it really absorbs a lot of the load through the body, and pain from weakness and dysfunction can cause pain. So initially they thought that they used to call it Achilles tendinitis when they thought it was a lot of inflammation around the tendon, but as time's progressed and kind of science has progressed as well, they've realised it's not inflammation around the tendon, but it's more kind of it's little micro tears and dysfunction around the tendon. So the Achilles tendon has poor blood flow around and doesn't have great healing capacity. So it does take a long time, usually, for healing for it to occur. So the best way to treat Achilles tendinopathy is usually treating it in the acute phases, the early stages of an injury. With tendinopathy, usually they're usually split into kind of 3 phases. So you have your reactive and your disrepair and your degeneration phase. But if we can really get it in that kind of acute, kind of first couple of weeks reactive phase, then you have better outcomes with for the long term. So with symptoms of Achilles tendinopathy, usually there's pain close to the heel, it's sharp, it's poking, and it's incapacitating. So it's usually between that kind of 2 to 6 centimeters above the heel is when you get that pain. It's really sore when you press and compress that tendon. With Achilles tendinopathy, there's 2 types. You have insertional, which is right onto the heel itself, and then I say it's at 2 to 6 centimeters is that kind of mid portion, and that's kind of the most kind of common injury, especially in runners. Usually get kind of mild swelling around that kind of tendon, and saying it's really tender to touch. One of the kind of most common features of Achilles tendinopathy is you get that morning stiffness alongside the kind of plantar fasciitis. Once you kind of get moving and warmed up, it kind of eases off a little bit. And then once you finish, if you go for a run or you do a little bit of exercise, and then afterwards it gets really sore. Okay, so it's not an injury that you can kind of run through. A lot of people think, okay, it's a little bit sore, and you think, all right, I'll just keep going with it. It gets to a point where you can't go with it anymore, and then you need to kind of backtrack a little bit. So the causes are mainly it's kind of excessive tight and weak calf muscles, so weak posterior chain muscles. So we talked about before about your back extensions, your glute muscles, your hamstrings, and your calves. If there's any weakness in those muscles, they can make more load go through the Achilles tendon. So constantly running on hard surfaces. So again, what we talked before, if you're changing your surface, then that can also help. If you're constantly running on the same surface, then you promote, and there's more load going through the Achilles. Also, unsupportive footwear. So if you don't have a good arch support, or if you're wearing flip flops on your holiday, that can overload that Achilles tendon. And if you're wearing worn out shoes, so shoes are really important. Let's make sure that they fit really good and they support your arch. Again, rapid increase in volume or intensity. So again, not doing too much too soon. A lot of people think, okay, right, I'm going to go and run. We're in lockdown. I'm going to go and run. But if you do too much too soon, your body's not used to it, then feel the effects of it. Also, the kind of causes severe pronation, foot instability, and muscle asymmetries can also cause Achilles pain. So how we can help again? So rest. The first kind of, if you're in that acute kind of reactive phase, rest, ice, strapping in the very early stages. So we're just offloading that tendon a little bit. If we continue to run, it can be really sore, and it's not going to get any better. So we need to offload it. So we don't run in it. It might be a case we put a little heel raise in, we might tape it, and then modifying your training intensity, volume, or complete rest depending on your pain and capacity of load and severity. So again, depending on what stage you are, if you are in that acute phase, we need to offload it. If you're in the kind of disrepair, or you're in the later stages, the chronic stages, then tendons need to be loaded. So it's important that we load it, but it needs to be in the right amount. Okay, if you overload it too quickly, too soon, again, it's going to cause you pain. But again, rest is not the only solution. So again, as we're talking about, if you're in the later stages, we don't want to just rest. We need to start loading the tissue. But again, education comes into that part. Soft tissue massage, stretching to release the tight structures throughout the lower back and the lower limbs. Again, that's something that physio we can help you with. So soft tissue massage we can help you with. You can do it at home. You can do some of your soft tissue release. Strengthening your calves, your hamstrings, glutes, and core. Your calves are going to be your most important things. There's definitely there's some protocols out there. There's your Alfredsons, your eccentric stuff that we'll probably talk a wee bit later. They're probably the most effective protocols that are out there that's going to help with your pain. But again, prevention. So increasing your flexibility and your strength, your ankle and your calf muscles. So they will also decrease the stress on your tendon. So the eccentric exercises. So they kind of lengthen and strengthen at the same time. So they're really probably the most important exercises you can do. So your soleus, your strength, so it's 7 to 8 times your body weight when running. So your soleus is your deep calf muscles. So they're really important. They're kind of your stabilizing calf muscles. If you can get strength in them alongside your gastroc muscles, then they reduce the risk of injury. Also strengthening your entire limb. So your pelvis, your core, your glute muscles, and your hamstring muscles. Again, that posterior chain, just working up that chain so all the load isn't going through your Achilles, it's going through your hamstrings, your calves, etc. So underlying risk factors, your shoes, your thoughts. So again, if you're getting assessed and you're finding that there's overpronation, or you have a high arch or low arch, then it's something we can look at, and monitoring your training capacity. So slow and steady wins the race. So again, looking at not doing too much too soon, that is a key. Although tendons, they really like to be loaded, it's not loading them too much that they become painful, and that is the key. So it's about kind of making sure that the program is individualized for each different client and patient. So depending on where they're at in their stage of their condition. So if they're in their active phase, maybe we don't load them too much, and then as they kind of progress, then we start to load them.
Okay, well done. Thanks, Ryan. Medial tibial stress syndrome, shin splints. Now, shin splints, like I said at the start, is an umbrella term for a number of different things. So we're going to focus purely on pain on the inside of the shin bone, right in against the bone. And that's usually because the muscles and tendons in the shin area are become quite tender and inflamed and develop micro tears near to the attachment of the bone. And pain can lessen as you get a sort of few miles into the run, but then it sort of usually sort of builds up as the run sort of progresses. One thing we always need to be really cautious and careful about with any sort of shin pain is that we don't have any sort of stress fractures as well. And that's something that you need to make sure that we clear in terms of the diagnostics to ensure that that what we're talking about is actually medial tibial stress syndrome and not a stress fracture of the bone, which sometimes can happen because there's been, again, too much training or too much volume, too much impact too soon, and quite a big change. But this sort of affects roughly about 15% of all running injuries. And like I say, it's usually sort of mild cases, it's just pain after running and pain on the inside of the shin bone, the tibia. And in moderate cases, the pain is more an impact as the foot strikes the ground, and that's just down to the attachment and the tight structures that are pulling on there. And in more severe cases, the pain can be just standing or walking around with any impact, and it can sometimes get a little bit red and swollen, but it's usually quite tight when you really squeeze and compress it. Sometimes the muscles in that area all sit in different compartments as well, so we need to. It can be sometimes quite a tricky area to diagnose because we're also looking for more serious issues in that area, like there's compartment syndrome as well, which sort of sits where the swelling is contained within the bag that the muscle sits in, and it's got nowhere to go, and that creates a build-up of pressure and discomfort. So we need to make sure we rule that out as well. But the biggest cause for this is usually a sudden spike in training volume and intensity. So that's what we always come back to, that training error. Has there been a sudden change to the volume, to the plan, the intensity? Is there a plan in place? What's the structure of the week, the month look like, and what's happened, and how quickly is this sort of developed? Has it been sudden onset, gradual onset? And this injury happens just as the increase in stress is loaded into the bone, and the tibia muscles and the muscles strengthen with repeated high impact activity, then the chance of shin splints lessens. So we want good length and strength. It's a common theme here between all the different exercises. So you can see where the injury prevention part is going to really come in. But it's, again, depends on your control of your foot and whether or not we've got good shock absorption and good appropriate footwear. That plays an important role as well. And again, obviously more load is higher BMI, but certainly we do know that this injury is much more common in females than in males. And there's a variety of different reasons behind that as well, but it's not for today to go into that in any great depth. So the fix is really, let's adapt your training volume first of all, and use that 5 to 10% rule in terms of just building up your mileage gradually across the week. We'll probably look to minimise your load a little bit and cross train slightly again to try and decrease that load, but keep your energy systems working so that you don't decondition and lose strength elsewhere in the limb, because that's really, really important for us when we're managing any injury, so that return to running and return to the load and the volume and impact is minimised, and we reduce the length of time that you're out injured. So that's really, really important. It's important for your cardiovascular fitness and just keep that engine ticking over. Rest, ice, and anti-inflammatories, of course, can play a role in that sort of initial period. Gait analysis can help us understand what kind of forces the foot is loading and how that's absorbing, how it's behaving, and see if there's different patterns between your left and right side to see if there's a reason why this is really developing. When you're managing this injury, a lot of it comes down to education and load management, and a little bit of soft tissue work can sort of help you along the way, but it will be strengthening for that entire limb so that we really understand what's going on. And then nutrition for bone healing. The bones heal slightly differently, and they can be quite demanding of from a calorie point of view. And also, if we're trying to heal the bone a little bit, then we know that we're going to want more vitamin D, we're going to want more protein and more calcium, and we have to increase our calorie intake to give the body what it needs to repair. But the prevention really comes from gradually increasing your mileage, mixing up your training volumes, making sure you've got good footwear, making sure you've got good mobility of your ankle and stability of your ankle, good control in that whole chain, and make sure that you can control how we progress things. And dynamic warm-ups can really help minimize your risk of shin splints. So we'll talk about warm-ups a little bit later as well, because I know a few of you've got questions on that as well. ITB syndrome is that tight band down the outside of the leg, and it's usually prevalent when you're running and sort of gradually builds, but the pain is always quite low down on the outside of the knee, especially when running downhill. So it can become quite crippling. The IT band is a sort of supporting structure. It's really, really thick connective tissue. It runs, you can usually feel it right the way down that outside of the leg. A lot of people are really big fans of foam rolling it. I'm not. Any of you that have been in to see me will probably heard one of my rants about foam rolling the IT band. It's a complete waste of time. Stretching your IT band also is a waste of time. It's such a strong, resilient structure that you can't stretch it. So we can stretch the muscles that can control it, and then there's a couple of muscles that interact with it that play such a key role, and they're the ones you really want to focus on, and that's much more up at the pelvis rather than down at the knee, albeit the knee is where the pain's felt. So the pain is always on the lateral outside the part of the knee, and you can usually feel it when you're on that sort of first step. Sometimes it can go away, but it is common in new runners. So if you've just taken up, if you've done a couch to 5k, or you're starting to build up towards a 10k, or increase your mileage, or you've increased your amount of hill running that you're doing, and typically that's when you can start to develop this. Weak muscles round about the hip and the pelvis usually causes that increase in compression, and obviously running downhill brings on a lot of that pain because it changes the angle of the knee, and also the control of the foot. The foot becomes really, really important. So we'll look at that. We always look above and below the joint that's given us the problem. So when you have knee pain, we'll look at the hip and the pelvis, and we'll look at the ankle and the foot, because there's almost clues in there as to why this type of injury is really coming on. But particularly when these muscles round about your pelvis start to fatigue, the knee and the ankle usually starts to collapse inwards, and then that's when that increased tension, increased force really starts to develop. So they can be quite challenging things to treat, but most commonly people treat them with rest and foam rolling, and these things we know just don't work. So focus on glute and hip strengthening. You can use anti-inflammatories and a little bit of icing in the initial phases, maybe for a period of a week, 10 days. But then we're really looking at increasing your mobility and restoring sort of normal flexibility and mobility of the hip and the knee. Try and avoid downhill running, but it does mean that you can do a lot of uphill run, so you can maintain your strength and your training without irritating it. Again, it depends on your pain, but really don't be rolling it. It's not worth it. Spend more time, if you're a fan of foam rolling, spend more time on your quads, your calves, and your glute muscles, and the muscles around about your pelvis and your hip. That's much more beneficial, and there's much more evidence to support that rather than focusing on ITB. So preventing it is obviously maintaining good soft tissue mobility, running on different surfaces if you can. Again, there's sort of common themes here. Advice about orthotics, but that depends really on your own sort of gait analysis and how your foot behaves and how your limb behaves. But always address any sort of weakness first before you go to change something with an orthotic. Address the muscle strength issues first, and then see how it impacts on your control, unless there's a specific event you really need to get fit for. Okay, the last one, Ryan.
So hamstring injuries. So hamstring. So the muscles are weak and they're long. Okay, and they kind of short and tight hamstring muscles pose all kinds of injury risks. So muscle imbalances overpowering the quadriceps. So again, when I was working football, that was tends to be quite of a high prevalence. The players used to kind of be really quad dominant, and then when it came to the hamstrings, they weren't really using them as much. So they used to get a lot of hamstring injuries. So the hamstring crosses two joints, which is a really unique. Unique muscle, so it crosses the hip joint, and also crosses the knee joint, so it's at more risk of then injury. It's also worked really hard in driving up hills and power and sprint. Hamstring injuries cause about 7% of running injuries. So usually there's two different types of injuries in the hamstring. So it tends to be a strain or a tear. So the acute injury. So it might be that usually that kind of you're running, you go, oh, my hamstring, pain behind the back of the leg, it really sore. Which usually occurs during your sprinting, your dynamic activities, your jumping, fast stop starts, or it kind of develops over time, which is your kind of tendinopathy, kind of overuse, overloading the muscle tendon as it attaches to the hamstring, just kind of underneath the buttock area. There are your main two type of hamstring injuries in runners. So with your kind of hamstring strains, again, usually they're kind of more common in people that are sprinting, or if they haven't trained for a while and they go to run fast, they're where you kind of get more pain and hamstring strains with those. So you usually get a sudden onset of pain whilst you're running. Okay, again, looking if you've not run for a long time and then you go to run and you're like, oh, pain, and you feel really sudden pain behind your back of your leg. Usually tends to be kind of sharp stabbing, possibly even kind of snap or popping sound. Again, it kind of goes back to the severity of the injury. If it's a little bit mild, you won't really feel as much. If it's a bit more severe, you might feel that kind of severe popping feeling, and you might notice some bruising and some swelling into the back of the hamstring. It can also be associated with back and buttock pain. So again, you can have some back pain, some kind of and buttock pain, and it also can refer into the hamstring. The more kind of severe injuries, yes, kind of grade 2, grade 3, you struggle to walk after them. So as soon as you go to sprint or you go to do some form of activity, you feel pain in the back of the hamstring. You maybe see initial swelling, and then you're really struggling to walk. It might be the next day, it might be kind of 2 days after, and you're kind of limping around. That kind of would suggest it's more kind of more significant injury, so maybe grade 2, grade 3. So hamstring strains kind of look at probably graded into your grade 1, 2, and 3. Your grade 1 usually is kind of your kind of mild one, so you're looking at kind of a couple of days up to a couple of maybe up to kind of 10 days maximum, and then your grade 2 and 3 you're looking probably from up to 2 weeks up to maybe it can take up to a couple of months to kind of rehab those properly. So your main, if you do have a hamstring strain, the main management for them is in the acute phase. You're looking at your kind of RICE, so your rest, ice, compression, elevation. So initially you're getting your ice on every kind of 1 to 2 hours. You're compressing it, so you get tube grip on, and you're getting when you're watching the telly, you're getting your foot up onto the couch. You're avoiding your kind of ibuprofen, your non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. So for the first at least 48 hours, you kind of don't want to look at them. You want to get your body's natural kind of anti-inflammatory system working. So, and also physio, different techniques you can use to promote healing and scar tissue, so your soft tissue techniques that can help with that. Your massage, your manual therapy can look at your hamstring. If it's too acute for your hamstring, then you maybe look at your glute, your calf, your lower back, the issues that possibly could be contributing to your hamstring strain. And then you've got to look at your exercise therapy. So you're looking at your slow and your progressives over your stages, depending on again how severe your tear is. So again, if it is a kind of a low grade tear, then you maybe want to load it a little bit more. If it's really high, then you're probably looking at your initial stages, your isometrics, and just gradually building up your load tolerance through your hamstrings. Also, kind of you're looking at your rehab, you're looking at your strengthening, not just your hamstrings, you're looking at your pelvis, your core, your glutes, and building those into, because they all have a play into how your hamstrings work. Also managing any muscle imbalances. So if we're testing and you're finding that there's weakness or there's flexibility that you may think that's contributing, then we'll maybe also kind of target those. Also with your hamstring strains, your sciatic nerve runs kind of down your lower back into your hamstring. So so if you find that your kind of sciatic nerve is maybe positive on your kind of in your neuro testing, then it might be that we add in some neuro stretches also, and then we're progressing into full leg strengthening exercises, your kind of your squats, your deadlifts. Looking at probably the most effective and kind of is looking at your eccentric strength. So you're looking to your lengthen and strengthen at the same time. So again, we talked about it previously in your kind of your calf injuries, but also your hamstrings. It's so important. Your eccentric strength is probably going to be your most effective treatment with your hamstring strains. And then, so hamstring tendinopathies. So there's usually hamstring tendinopathies tend to be kind of quite high up under your buttock area, usually due to a history of increased load. So, or you've increased your hill running or your speed work, or uncustomized to your deep lunges, your yoga, or your deadlifts. You get this kind of pain right behind your buttock that you've not really had before. There's also there's poor blood flow to that kind of area, which makes healing slow, and the recovery can tend to be a bit longer than normal. So the symptoms tend to be, so it's again that buttock pain. So you have that kind of pain that you can pinpoint. You can use your hand to kind of pinpoint it's right under my bum. So when you get a lot of pain with sitting, when you're kind of sitting on your ischial tuberosity, chronic stiffness. So again, the longer you sit, the longer that pain goes on. So again, it's due to kind of the compression of that hamstring tendon. So when you bring your kind of your knee towards your chest, that hip flexion that brings that, compresses that hamstring tendon. So again, it's aggravated by periods of sitting, driving, deep lunges, hamstring stretches, and running at high speeds and uphill. So again, when that tendon, the hamstring tendon, you've got three hamstrings. And there's attached to the ischial tuberosity right under the bum. So when you're bringing that kind of knee up towards your chest, the hamstring tendons get compressed, and they don't really like that as such. So that's where the pain usually comes from. So again, it's the kind of like normal tendinopathy you don't like in the morning. As soon as you get up first thing in the morning, there's some stiffness, there's some pain. Once you get moving, it eases off a little bit, and then once if you kind of do some exercises and get warmed up, it feels okay. And then after you stop, it tends to kind of get sore again, and that's the usual kind of tendinopathy path. So following exercise, pain can be be delayed from kind of 24 to 48 hours. So again, with your tendinopathy, usually the next day is kind of how you're monitoring how your pain reacts afterwards. So the kind of main management of tendinopathy, so again, depending on what stage you're at, tendinopathies, again, as I kind of said earlier, they go through that kind of acute, reactive, and degenerative stages. So if you're in that kind of acute stage, icing is the most important thing, and stopping the kind of activity that is really, really sore. Stretching, again, a lot of people think, okay, my hamstring's really sore, I need to stretch it. But in fact, if you're stretching it, you're really compressing that tendon against the ischial, like kind of tuberosity, against the kind of hip pain, hip bone. So you don't really want to stretch it. Okay, so you want to avoid stretching, and then sitting as little as possible and using a kind of soft under your buttock to relieve the pressure. So again, it depends on how if you're working kind of a lot, then you kind of need to get up and move around. If you're sitting for long periods of time, then it's just going to be compressing, the hamstring tendon is going to be compressing under that ischial tuberosity and the hip bone. So you want to avoid that as much as you can. Also, you want to mobilize the tight structures and promote tissue healing under massage, different techniques. So again, physio, we can kind of relax your hamstrings, your back, things that can definitely have an effect on your kind of proximal hamstring. And again, in the initial stages, if it's really, really sore, so we need to deload the tendon, but also we can use some isometric exercises. So looking 2 to 3 weeks, it might just be some isometric holds, so you don't work through any change in length of the muscle. You just kind of contract the muscle and make sure that it's working, but it's in a kind of pain-free range. Also, your rehab is looking at load modification. Again, if you've done too much too soon, we want to tailor that back a little bit. So we don't want to do too much too soon. Again, make sure that we for each different individual, we kind of monitor the training load for looking at manage muscle imbalances through weakness and flexibility through exercises. So if there is if we do an assessment and we find that there's some weaknesses or there's some flexibility issues, then we really need to focus on those. And again, strengthening your core, your pelvis, and your glute muscles. So again, looking not just at your hamstrings, so we're looking a little bit up the chain. If there's some issues that we think that, okay, they're not working as well as they should be, can we focus on those and then take some load off the hamstrings, because the hamstrings are doing a little bit too much. Again, some neuromobilization stretches. So that sciatic nerve, so the sciatic nerve runs through the back, right down the hamstring. So again, if that's really, really close to where the hamstring tendinopathy, that ischial tuberosity, that might be involved a little bit as well. So if we can get that moving a little bit more freely, then that might kind of reduce your pain as well. But the thing, as Stephen mentioned before, is strengthening, and your eccentric strengthening. So you're lengthening and strengthening at the same time, and that kind of comes at your later stages of rehab. So hamstring injury training, so complete rest depending on severity or injury, or reduced intensity of training volume. Again, that comes down to your diagnosis, if it's a hamstring strain or if it's a hamstring tendinopathy. Again, how you manage it. If it's a hamstring strain, then initial phases you want to decrease your load alongside your hamstring tendinopathy. In initial phase, you want to decrease your load. If it's avoiding speed and hill work, so again, if you have that hamstring tendinopathy, you want to avoid as much hip compression as you can. So again, every time you're bringing that hip and your knee up towards your chest, you're compressing that hamstring injury. So we want to avoid that as much as we can. So ideally, we want to find a comfortable pace and distance that elicits no pain, and stick to that 3 times your week, with a day rest in between. So again, it's monitoring your training load. So if you're doing loads and loads of training and it's becoming really, really sore, you need to kind of tailor that back a little bit and make sure that you're getting rest periods in between. That's the most important thing. Pain tells your body there's something maybe not kind of feeling so good, so you need to drop that back a little bit, find a level that you're comfortable with, and then work at that level, and then make sure that your body's feeling okay with that level, and then you recover, and then you go again, and gradually increase as you feel comfortable. Cross training with cycling, water running, cycling, elliptical training. So again, if you're loading your hamstring consistently, then it's just going to put all that load onto that hamstring. So if you can cross train, so you might overload your quads, your glutes, different parts of the body, then it offloads the hamstrings a little bit. And then address underlying contribution factors, so your biomechanics. So as we said before, your foot position, so it might be look at your shoes, how your foot's moving, and then how it works up the chain. And then again, that kind of links back to kind of gait analysis and again, if we think if possibly the foot position is altering how your gait is working, then your foot position and your foot is the most important thing. So again, looking at hamstring training, so complete rest depending on severity or reduced intensity of volume. So in initial stage, you have an acute hamstring strain. We want to offload and
Sorry, Ryan, sorry to interrupt. Can we all just make sure our mics are off, please? Everybody else that's not speaking. There's a wee bit of background noise when Ryan's speaking. That'd be great. Thanks.
Okay, sorry guys. So again, if depending on what the injury is, so if it is a hamstring strain, so it's one of those acute injuries, you went to run and you feel pain behind my back of my leg. Okay, you need to possibly look at some acute rest. So you need to offload the hamstring a little bit. Okay, again, if it is one of those longer term kind of chronic issues, it's overload, is kind of more the higher up hamstring injuries, then we're thinking, how can we alter your training loads? Okay, again, it might be a case that we need to drop the training load a little bit. We might need to cross train slightly, change your training load. We might need to avoid any hill work and any speed work because that might be aggravating. And also we might need to find a comfortable pace and distance that elicits no pain and stick to that for 3 weeks with a rest day in between. So again, if we're finding that we're really sore, we're running, okay, we're getting to a level that is sore, 24 hours after it's really sore, then that's telling your body that we need to drop off a little bit. Okay, so we need to maybe drop back, okay, find a level that we can get to, and then be comfortable, no pain, and then the next day we can go again, no pain, and then have a rest day. Recovery is so important that we will speak a little bit later. Obviously, that recovery plays a major part in your injuries as well. So your hamstring injury prevention, so strengthening your hamstrings, your back, your glutes, your core. So again, looking at posterior chain, good flexibility and your neural mobility. So again, looking at your hamstrings, it might be your lower back, that sciatic nerve stretching can be make sure that that's moving freely throughout as well. Regular massage to maintain healthy tissue and pick up any tight and early niggles. So again, if you're increasing your running, you're feeling your hamstring a little bit tight, it might be a case that before anything gets really sore and chronic, we can attack that. Kind of your massage techniques, your compression tights during and after to improve and help with blood flow and your recovery. So again, that's some things that you guys, if you are keen runners, that you can use at home to kind of prevent any long-term injuries. Eccentric training 2 to 3 times a week. Again, I think for me that's the most important thing. Again, if it's tendons like to be loaded. Eccentric, again, if we can lengthen and strengthen at the same time. It's so important. Warming up before, and then gradual training and load and intensity. So again, making sure that depending where you are in your training regime, you've got to adapt and make sure that training regime is appropriate for yourself, and you're not comparing yourself. A lot of what we find is, oh, my friend Dave, he's been working for 6 weeks. He's running 10K, but I've just started. So again, you've got to kind of make sure that you it's got to be kind of appropriate to yourself and where you are at your training level. Okay, so if in case we need to start back again and then gradually progress as we go on.
Okay, so there's a huge amount of content there. We've covered a lot of stuff with the sort of the 6 big injuries, and we're just going to sort of summarise the sort of key points in terms of how can you prevent yourself from being exposed to these injuries. So we've covered a lot of the understanding and the reasons for getting injured, and I think the key thing obviously is those training errors, is understanding what's going on, and if we can prevent the injuries, then that's going to avoid these setbacks. And if we limit those, that allows for more training time, running more consistently, easy for me to say. That allows you to reach higher weekly mileage and allows you to do that sort of gradual build up to do more challenging workouts. And then obviously from a performance perspective, you're going to be running faster for longer if you're being able to train better and train more consistently without having constant little niggles and little setbacks. So that's really where we're looking at. So again, just a refresh. Training errors is number one cause. It's too much overload. So keep the weekly mileage to the 5 to 10% rule. That's what we really want. We want to include recovery days, and we want to try different routes, different surfaces, rotate different trainers, and know your ability. But slow and steady wins the race. And the key for this is always have a plan. Decide what your goal is and have a plan. Structure it backwards from the end point as to what you want to achieve. And then we can structure your training plan to make sure that you achieve your goal. If you're just training blind and just doing what you're thinking and just going out and running off feel all the time, then that's when the confidence builds up. I'm feeling great. I'm going to push it for an extra 5 miles today because the body feels fantastic. And then all of a sudden we pick up an injury. That's typically what we hear a lot of, because I've been running really, really well, feeling good, and the confidence then exceeds the capability of the tissue. And because there's not a plan in place, we've not really thought about what we're trying to achieve and what stage we're at in that process. And then we're not actually even monitoring what our weekly mileage is or what our training load is and our current capacity. Biomechanical factors, obviously we've touched on that, and running style is relevant in terms of obviously good technique reduces stress, but it's very, very difficult to change your style, particularly later in life, and it's not a quick fix. But gait analysis obviously can help us understand how the foot behaves, and once we know how the bottom of the chain reacts, then we can help control and influence any sort of biomechanical factors that we may have down to our own styles. But you can make subtle changes to your style which can make quite big improvements, but that's something you've got to work at consistently when you're running and be conscious of and have an awareness of. One of the biggest things is obviously recovery time, and a lot of people don't pay enough attention to this. This is something that we see and hear all the time, because people just want to push themselves, they want to train, they want to do whatever they can do, but recovery is actually so important, and is a key part of any successful training program, is to have good recovery time. And not having that then really does expose you to more injury. There's no question of it, and that's how overtraining starts to develop, by not incorporating recovery time and having those rest days as your training intensity and volume increases. Then we need to make sure that we've got that recovery in. And the 3 big wins for any sort of recovery are always sleep, nutrition, and make sure we've got a little bit of recovery time, as in an off day from your sort of training. But the sleep and nutrition and hydration become really, really, really important with recovery. You've got to give the body the right nutrients to repair. You've got to give it the right environment with having enough hydration, and we've got to get enough sleep. Sleep's when the body recovers at its best. And athletes, top athletes, real high-end endurance athletes, need more sleep. If we're sleep deprived, then there's some really, really good research out that shows that chronic sleep deprivation can increase your risk of injury by 20%. And that's not great news for Ryan and I, who have a very young family at the moment, but that can be offset by having a good training plan. And then nutrition, you've got to give the body the nutrition it needs. You've got to give it the protein and the carbs, make sure it's got the glycogen and the repair with the protein in it, and amino acids, to make sure that the body can recover from the stimulus of exercise that we're giving it. Because the exercise causes these wee micro tears that the body's got to recover from, and that's how we get stronger. And that's what makes us better. So inadequate nutrition is really, really a key factor again and again in the more endurance athletes. So as you start to build up your mileage, then that's really where a lot of the big wins come from, because that's when the body fatigues, when it's not got the energy sources. So we've got to make sure that we give the body the fuel it requires to do the task that we're asking of it. And dehydration, particularly even in Scotland with this good weather we're having, it's really, really important that we stay hydrated. And that means sometimes drinking a lot more than what we normally do, because then we've got to make sure that we're hydrating for our activity and not just our day. Like a very, very simple tip with hydration is, if you were to weigh yourself before a run and then weigh yourself after a run, and then for every gram of weight you've lost, then you drink 1 ml. So you lose a kilo, you drink a litre. Simple but effective. And obviously give yourself plenty of protein to help the repair. Typically we need maybe 1.5 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of your own body weight to really help repair. Now that's a lot more than a lot of people take in, but that needs to be taken in across the day. Timing's not so important with it, but daily intake is really, really important, because the body's in that constant healing cycle. So if you get your daily intake right every single day, then that's good enough. Timing's not really, really that important, but you'll spread that maybe across 4 intakes and within the day. Muscle imbalance and weakness, obviously we spoke about this quite a lot throughout, but tight, shortened, and weak and long muscles are really, that's where it causes a lot of problems. So we've got to understand what's going on with your body, what's going on with each person individually, and that's where a good quality assessment can really, really help address and identify these issues if you're not clear where they are already. Prior injury, as we spoke about, having that awareness that you've had an injury in the last 12 months, that's one of the strongest risk factors. So that's when you have to pay much more attention to your strengthening and your flexibility and mobility issues, even when you're pain-free. Having the absence of pain is not an indication that the muscle's recovered or the tendon's recovered. That injured tissue is still maturing for the next 12 months. So we've got to give it the attention and love that it requires and keep nurturing it for the next 12 months. So keep on top of it and be consistent with that. Can't just ignore things just because we don't have any pain. And that's usually a common mistake that we see re-injury, because we've given somebody an injury prevention plan. 3 months later, they've stopped doing their exercises because they're not painful anymore. And then all of a sudden they've re-injured themselves again. They've not paid attention to the training load, and they've not remodeled that injured tissue. So we really want to make sure that's a progressive return, and we stay really on top of our injury prevention programs that we have for each individual. Flexibility and mobility. So the difference between flexibility and mobility is really, flexibility is the range of motion you have, how flexible are you throughout that range. Mobility is having the stability and the strength to control your body through that range. So mobility is probably more important than flexibility, because we can strengthen. You've heard Ryan use it, strengthen as you lengthen, but we can actually use strengthening exercises to improve our flexibility and our mobility, and then that becomes much more time efficient for you, and you get much more value for that. We do obviously really encourage dynamic stretches and warm-up. So some of you have been asking a lot about warm-ups. What do we recommend for runners? And really the most important thing is, when you're warming up, you're engaging all the muscles we're going to use: your calves, your hamstrings, your quads, and your glutes, your lower back, and your ankle. So a little bit of ankle mobility, a little bit of squatting, a little bit of lunging, a little bit of variety in your lunges, different angles, different directions, single leg deadlifts, like just with body weight, nothing too complicated, just a few reps of everything just to get it active. So really we're looking at a dynamic warm-up and then the big long stretches in the cool down. You really don't want to be doing long stretches before you go out a run. We want to mobilize things and do dynamic movements that really switch muscles on, get the body used to moving, and build the intensity of your warm-up. The warm-up really, the evidence for that is limited for sub-maximal runners. So those who aren't performance-based and really working at 100%, i.e. the elite sports people. So if you're not really running for a PB, then you're not really running at 100% max, and therefore the warm-up doesn't need to be so stringent. The cool down and restoring yourself back to normal length is probably more important. And that's where you do your long holds, your long stretches, a little bit more sort of gentle mobility work, and obviously regular massage and stuff like that can help as well. But warm-up's more about activation, and the cool down's about long static holds and restoring natural length after the activity. But the biggest thing to take away from today, and this is the biggest thing that a lot of runners hate, because they hate going to the gym, they hate doing strengthening exercises because they just want to go out and run. They enjoy being out in the countryside, they enjoy the fresh air, they enjoy the endorphin release. But really, if you want to make that much more enjoyable experience and avoid these injuries, then strength training is the most important thing. And really, we're looking at you doing that once to twice a week and focusing on sort of fundamental strengthening exercises for the glutes and quads, hamstrings, calves. And really, single leg strength is the best thing to make sure that you can address any asymmetries. So using doing like lunges with your foot on a chair behind you, single leg bridges, that type of thing can really, really work well. And obviously for the calves, Achilles, the hamstrings, Ryan's already touched on it, but the eccentric exercises are really, really important, and that applies as well to groin injuries also. So they are where the best bang for your buck in terms of your time, so you can have a really efficient strength training program, so you can maximize your running. So we've mentioned gait analysis a couple of times, and we've got that obviously in the clinic. When we get back to the clinic, when we get back to face-to-face, and we use the same technology and insoles that are used by sort of Paula Radcliffe and Lily Partridge, because it's the best stuff. It's the best available on the market at the moment, and we've really found it helped a lot of our clients improve their running and reduce their risk of injury. So that's essentially what I wanted to talk to everybody about today, but there should be, let's see, what questions have we got? What questions have we got? How useful is foam rolling to incorporate into pre-warm-up and post-run cool-down recovery? So foam rolling, it depends what you're really trying to achieve by foam rolling. Can it help improve mobility in terms of pre-sport? Yes, but it can be quite time consuming. So the value for that is probably elsewhere. There is value for some people, and some people really enjoy it. So it can be useful, but it's each to their own really on that. There is more use for it in a sort of cool down and recovery than there is for it in a sort of pre-run warm-up, but it doesn't really improve flexibility, and it doesn't improve mobility. So and if it does, it's only short term. So much more use for it post-run. Other question is the best time to stretch to prevent injury. Before, during, e.g. 20 minutes into a run, stop and stretch, or at the end and still warm, or after I've cooled down. So I think I've just touched on that. Definitely the longer stretches, 30 seconds to a minute, even 2 minutes, up to 2 minutes, always afterwards. Don't really want to be stopping and doing any stretching during it, unless you've got a specific issue that you want to address and deal with, and if you feel quite tight with that. But then you want to keep those stretches a lot shorter. You probably want to keep them to sort of 7 to 10 seconds, not too long, because you don't want those big long holds before or during a run. That's what we would always try and encourage you to to avoid doing that, but we want to, it's about changing things. So if you're feeling it tight as the run's building and you're developing it, it's because run is so repetitive, and that's one of the reasons that we get injured. So we want to change that up a little bit. So if you need to stop and have a different, mobilize it in a different way, or do a couple of different exercises to just to change how the body's feeling, then by all means, that's would actively encourage that. Listen to your body. It's really, really important. Any other questions? Any other questions, type it into the chat if you've got any other questions, any sort of key takeaways or what you found really valuable. That'd be good feedback for us. No, nothing there. Great. Well, thank you all very much for your time. What we'll do is as a result, as a wee sort of thank you for you all coming. I know some people will have different issues, so we'd like to offer everybody a sort of free 30-minute discovery visit, if you like, so that you can just have a wee chat with one of us, one-to-one, discuss about your own issues and see if we can do that. So if that's something that interests you, then simply reply to one of our emails and we can try and get that all lined up for you and get it sorted and see if we can address your issues online with a virtual appointment. That would be something really worthwhile. So a free 30-minute virtual appointment as a wee thank you to you all is on offer, and Ryan and I would be delighted to help you and keep you all running and keep you all healthy and keep you physically, mentally strong as we come out of lockdown. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. All the thank yous coming in, great. Excellent. It's always nice to get some good feedback, but make sure you're following us on our Facebook and Instagram accounts if you're not already. It's always much appreciated. We have loads of sort of free health advice and tips and little nutritional guides as well in there as well. So there's lots of good stuff in there. So but thank you very much for your attendance tonight and for your time, and take care.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thanks, guys. That was great. Thanks very much.